Hey there, welcome back to The Empowered Edge, the podcast where we cut through the noise, ditch the overwhelm, and unlock your best self through optimal health, a resilient mindset, and habits that actually last. I'm your host, Jenna Hostetler, registered dietitian, certified neurocoach, and proud obsessor of all things psychology and leadership. Every week, you'll get practical, science-backed strategies that give you the clarity and confidence to take action, break through barriers, and most importantly, own your health, own your life, and live with purpose. Hey there, and welcome back. Today we are diving into a topic that affects absolutely everyone, and that topic is stress. I'm joined today by Alexa Hanshaw, an expert in helping high performers manage stress so they can show up stronger in both their personal and professional lives. If you've ever wondered why stress feels so overwhelming, how it impacts your body, and most importantly, how to take back control, this episode is for you. Today we're joined by Alexa Hanshaw, who is a health and stress management coach. Alexa, thank you for being here today. I'm very interested to chat with you.
Yeah, Jenna, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to chat all about stress management, how, it relates to gut health and really supporting everyone that's listening.
Okay, so when I think of stress and telling people to be less stressed, I feel like it's one of those things where everyone's like, yeah, I know I should, but until it's like a huge problem, nobody really cares or wants to address it. So, at least in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
what are the less obvious signs that someone might be dealing with stress in their body?
Yeah, that's really a great question. Some less obvious signs that you might not recognize as stress related. It can really be talk about headaches, talk about even eye strain, talk about your digestion not being regular. And that can be on either side. That can either be constipation or that can be diarrhea. Um, and moodiness is another one that can really be affected by stress and, taking out your stress on a loved one or a friend and not even realizing it. So some of those things people don't typically correlate directly with stress, but they're one of the earlier signs of what I like to call chronic stress, or what is called chronic stress. Yeah.
Okay, so since you mentioned it, where's the fine line? Where's the difference between that acute stress that everybody has and it's not a big deal and the chronic stress where it starts to be like a huge problem? Is it like if it's daily, if it's weekly, like is there an amount of stress that's okay?
Yes, that is absolutely a great question. So not all stress is created equal. I'll start off by saying that there are different types of stress. There is eustress and distress. And, eustress, if you look at it as, and this can be a type of acute stress. This is almost that good type of stress. So maybe you have a big presentation and you're a little nervous. You get the butterflies in your stomach. Heartbeat might start to increase a little bit, but it pushes you towards motivation, or it pushes you towards productivity, or it pushes you towards doing your best. So that type of stress is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually getting us to be a better version of ourselves. The difference or the issue with chronic stress is when people don't finish the stress cycle. And with a stress cycle, you have a trigger. So something triggers you or triggers stress, then you have the stress response in your body. So the stress response in your body can look like your heart rate increasing. It is, your blood pressure might increase a little bit. Your blood starts to rush to your extremities. So you're really ready for that fight or flight type of reaction. And that's really your body's stress response. And then the part that most people miss, especially people getting into chronic stress, is the rest, or is the reset part of the stress cycle. So when you get into chronic stress, unfortunately, there's not if you're stressed chronically for 3 months, then you're in the chronic stress phase and you need to be worried about it. It is going to be different for every single person. What one person might be able to handle stress for 6 months, a different person, it might take 2 weeks. And then the chronic stress can really start to wreak havoc on their body. So it really depends on the person. But the key is when you continuously get triggered, you have the stress response and then go back to another trigger and then stress response, trigger, stress response, etc. Then you're not giving your body the time to reset, and you're not giving your body the time to be able to improve your immune system again. It's not being able to focus on your digestion again when you're in that constant fight or flight mode. Did I answer your question? I know I kind of
Yeah, no, that was really good.
around a few things, but
So it's almost like you're bouncing like continuously from one stressor to the next. It's the crazy morning, get up, the kids ready routine. Then you go to work and you're stressed, and you come home and there's stuff to do, and then you got to worry about dinner, and it's like it's a never ending, constant bounce from one stress to the next. Versus it's all good. I have this thing to work on. I'm gonna worry about it and stress on it and get it done, and then go back to normal.
mm-hmm. And then be able to kind of get your body, get your nervous system from the sympathetic nervous system, so the fight or flight, into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So giving it that opportunity, like I said, to reset and prepare for the next trigger versus the constant, pings of trigger response, trigger response, trigger response. Then your body starts to move to a new normal. And that's when the chronic stress becomes an issue, when the new normal is your stress response. And that's when you see the elevated heart rate, the elevated blood pressure, you're constantly getting sick, little colds, you start to get the flu, because your immune system is compromised.
Is it possible? This just came to me.
Mm-hmm.
To have stress. Okay, so obviously, like if you break your leg, there's inflammation and stress and stuff going on physically.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ever happen on a daily basis, like a physical version that's not necessarily so mental, that maybe somebody might not realize is going on? Like, are there physical stressors that we can be doing to our body?
That's a great question.
All I can think of maybe is like super sleep deprived.
Yes, that is the direction. I was gonna go in two different directions. So constantly, like you said, being sleep deprived, and again, that goes to you're not letting your body really reset from the day. You're not giving it the ability to repair itself from the previous day. So it's constantly going to be in that high stress period. The other one that I was thinking of is over-exercise, and people who are constantly doing high intensity interval training or constantly running, like putting a constant pressure on their body, can also heighten the stress response. Now, some bodies can handle that. Some people kind of prepare for that. You think about elite athletes, they're obviously constantly working out and focusing on that. But if I'm thinking about a non-elite athlete, and you are constantly doing high intensity interval training, you're also stressing your muscles, your bones, your tendons, and not giving them the chance to repair themselves. So again, that could cause issues in the long run. And that typically looks like injuries, and long-term sustained injuries.
Right. So, a lot of people deal with stress with food and drinking, whether it's pop, whether it's soda, whether it's a glass of wine at the end of the day. So what have you found? Have you found any really good ways to help people get out of that stress eating cycle?
Yes, stress eating is a major focus with many, many of my clients. And, it's definitely not a do this and you're fixed type of situation. It's definitely something that we work on for several sessions together, and several cycles of kind of goals and habit changing. But if you look at it, the key that I usually start with around stress eating is awareness, having the person yes, be like, yes, I know I stress eat, but also recognizing, how do we get them to recognize in the moment that they're stress eating? So there's a couple ways that I've worked with my clients. There's a hunger scale that I like to use that's been really beneficial with some of my clients, and recognizing before they eat a snack or something that's not just before they eat something, thinking about the hunger scale and how hungry are they actually, and where, like, really tapping into their, not intuition, but how they're feeling around their hunger. And then from there, once they start to recognize the different levels of, okay, I'm really full, or okay, I'm actually really quite hungry, then you can start to put some goals around what they're eating, when they're eating, how they're eating, in a way that supports not always grabbing something sweet when they're stressful, or not always gravitating towards a comfort meal when they've had a really long day, or grabbing for that glass of wine. It's really mostly a mindset shift, and getting them to connect their action with the perceived reward from it, and how can we break that cycle.
I like that you said perceived reward. Because, in that moment, it's like, this is going to make me feel better. But afterwards, you don't feel any better. It didn't actually do anything.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And a lot of times it comes with guilt too, so it makes you feel even worse. So how do we remove that guilty feeling, because we don't want anyone to feel deprived by any means, but making the connection to eating because you're hungry and because you're going to enjoy something, versus because you're bored, sad, angry, stressed.
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody has like a super fast-paced life, a high-stress job, you know, there's definitely phases of life that I feel like everybody goes to where it's just nonstop. The next 3 months are going to be crazy.
Mhm.
How do you cope with that?
Yeah. So, I definitely, a lot of my clients happen to be in these stages of their life when they come to me. So it's really important to look at time management and really understanding where your time is going. I like to do a time study with my clients. And yes, it does take a little bit of extra time for them to look at where they're spending their time. But in the long run, it helps them see, okay, I actually have a little bit more time than I thought, because I'm wasting, you know, 30 minutes here on Instagram, or I'm watching 3 shows when I really only need to be watching one show at this point. Or, just where can they find pockets of time, but then also really prioritizing what's important to them right now. So maybe getting to the gym for an hour is just not going to fit into their schedule at this point in their life. That's okay. How can you still get in movement that's going to make you feel good and is going to be good for your body? So, how can you get in 10 minutes here or 5 minutes there? And also, helping them see that there's always ways that you can fit your wellness into your schedule, and whether that's eating healthy, and what's little things you can do that make it easier on yourself, like using a pressure cooker or an Instapot. Or how can you tap into and be more mindful for even 5 minutes a day, and see how that can shift your focus and shift your perspective, and make you be able to optimize your time a little bit better when you're not trying to do 20 things at once. You take 5 minutes, you recenter, you focus, whether that's on your breath or just, a quick meditation, and then be able to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my highest priority, and then move on to the next thing. So there are definitely several pieces that I work with my clients on, between time management, ensuring that they get what's their highest priority, whether that's, cooking healthy meals or whether that's getting movement in, how can we fit that into their schedule to then better optimize their time in their day?
Nice. I'm curious if you've seen any personalities that are more prone to being a high stress type of person. Like, have you? Because I feel like there's some people that just like they thrive in a stressful environment.
Hmm.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, so I think there's a you can perceive people thriving, or people even perceive themselves as thriving in stressful situations, or in, I'm better when I'm busy, or I do better when I'm busy and don't have time to think or don't have time to rest, which if they look at their work or if they look at their life, they may, in theory, be doing more, but how, if they're not giving themselves time to stop or think, then they're also not able to tap into how that's actually affecting their body or affecting their mindset as well. So it's a tough question because you definitely have your type A personalities that are kind of very organized, and it seems like they can handle more stress in a better way. But I would be interested to see from a research perspective how, like, internally that's actually affecting them. Are they actually thriving? Or from the outside, does it look like they're thriving because they're successful and they're checking things off their list and they're doing everything that they need to do? But how is it affecting their health in the long run? So I don't have any research studies to back that up, but I would be interested to see kind of what that looks like. So again, I don't know if that, I don't think it answers your question directly, but from a outward looking in, it would seem like type A personalities could handle stress better. Um, but I would be interested to see physiologically if that's the case versus just kind of outside, perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious if there was any like major commonalities. You're like, oh, this person has this job and does this thing, and they're going to come to me because they're super crazy stressed. I didn't know if you had seen anything like that, but you're probably right that a lot of
Yeah.
people can just act like they handle it a lot better. I'm sure there's
Mhm.
a ton of other things that also get internalized, which also adds to a ton of stress.
Yeah, and I think too our society almost wears busyness like a badge versus um seeing all sides of what busyness can bring. So I think there's also that piece of people want to be perceived like they're busy and then be perceived like they're being successful with this busyness. So it's tough. From what I've seen with my clients, I work with a lot of women in corporate America, as well as female entrepreneurs. Those are kind of the two buckets that seem to gravitate towards me. And both of them tend to have a lot of, I'm going to have my to-do list. I want to be able to check things off my to-do list. I'm taking everything on myself. I don't really like to ask for help. That's definitely the personality type that tries to handle the stress, and then in the end up needing support and kind of those tools in their toolbox for stress management, because they never really learned how to handle it. They're just pushing through.
Okay, tell me I'm not the only one who loves checking things off the list and getting things done. When Alexa said that we live in a society that wears business like a badge of honor, I could 100% relate to that. For the longest time, when people asked how I was doing, my default answer was busy, as if my worth was somehow tied to how much I could juggle. And don't get me wrong, being productive is great, but it's so easy to slip into that hustle cycle that leaves us feeling drained instead of fulfilled. And sometimes I still catch myself saying that. So if this conversation resonated with you, take a moment this week to reflect on how you're spending your time. Are you busy just for the sake of it? Or are you creating a life that truly supports what matters most to you? Next week, we are continuing this conversation with simple, practical ways to reduce stress, no matter where you are or who's around. So tune in next week for part 2 of this stress series. Take action, stay empowered, and I'll see you soon. Okay, now before you pop off, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the one episode that could change your life. And give us a 5-star review if you learned something new today. If you want to check out all the awesome free guides, templates, and resources I've given away on this podcast, go to theneurodietitian.com/resources. You can grab anything you want, but only if you'll do it. Because information without implementation is worthless. And here at the Empowered Edge, we're action takers, not excuse makers.